Okay, just turn 2. I think we should start. Yeah. So good afternoon, everyone. My name is Francesco Petruccione. I'm the director of NITheCS, and it is my pleasure to introduce the third installment of the October mini-school, yeah, on biodiversity monitoring with the help of data cubes. Yeah, and it is a practical, not only theoretical, but also practical mini-school. Again with us, Dr. Sandra MacFadyen and Maarten Trekels. Yeah, so thank you very much to both of you for being here again and acting as a perfect team. Yeah, I think if I understood it correctly, today Sandra will be our lecturer, and Maarten will take care of the interactions in the chat and in the Q&A. Yeah. You all know the rules of the game, I guess. Yeah. So, Sandra, I see you already started kindly sharing your slides. You are most and welcome to start. Yeah. No, thank you very much, Sandra.
Thank you, Francesco, and thanks everyone for joining us again for this third installment of our biodiversity monitoring using data cubes. Maarten, as Francesco said, is with me in the chat, but he's also with me in person. So he's normally in Belgium. He's actually come out for the week to work with us, or 2 weeks to work with us. Just to give us a recap on where we are. What we went through in the first session was our introduction and the general introduction to biodiversity, but also to data cubes and the publication of data using the FAIR principles. Last week, Maarten took you through the basics of building data cubes with GBIF, an introduction to GBIF, and gave you the hands-on guide on how to start off pulling out species records and species occurrence records. And today I'm going to take you through some ecological modeling with data cubes. I'm going to take you through the process of, once again, extracting data from GBIF, to do a little bit of recap from what Maarten did last week, but also show you some different ways to do the same thing, essentially. And we will create data cubes of those records once we've got that data brought in. Show you how to visualize those results, the interactive map using Google Earth Engine. And then we'll try and get to see some patterns in terms of species distribution, species diversity, and as they are related to environmental variables like climate. We have quite a lot to get through, but last week there was some comments that we should slow down a little bit. So I'm going to try and take it as slow as possible. And go through each of the steps with you. As last week, it's the same. You need to have created your own accounts through GBIF and Google Earth Engine, as well as Colab. So we will be coding straight in Colab, but you need to have those other things set up. And then next week, we will go into some open data, and Maarten and I will take you through that last session. So today, as I said, we're going to look at analyzing some data. We're going to take it slow through Colab and try and take you through the different steps. So those who are not familiar with Colab and are not familiar with the Python environment or Python coding, we will take you through some basics of that, just to make sure that everyone's on board. Here is the link. I'm going to quickly paste it in the chat, or actually Maarten's going to do it for me. Thank you. So this is the link where the code is stored. It's on our GitHub, our NITheCS GitHub site. Once you clicked on that, I'm going to show you in a minute that you'll need to use the button that says open in Colab. And then we're going to go straight live, and hopefully everyone will be having the same screen in front of them. So I'm going to exit this PowerPoint presentation now and click on this link. And let me just share my new screen with you. All right, everyone should now see the CubesPrac3 IPYNP, which is the Python Jupyter notebook, in our GitHub site. All right, if you don't have that, please just put your hand up or write in the chat, and Maarten will help you out. Once you have that open, once the link is open, you'll see there's a button here that says Open in Colab. If you do that, it's going to open up that script, but in your Colab environment. So if you want to save this to your G Drive environment, you'll click on File, and you'll go to Save a Copy in Drive. That will then save a copy of this notebook, but in your Drive specifically. So if you want to access data that you've got on your hard drive, or specifically in your Google Drive, you will need to do that, because when you mount your disk and you want to access data, you'll have to have a local copy of it. All right, I'm going to switch to my local version of it. Go up here. All right, so this is my local version. It will look exactly the same. It's just that this is saved locally on my computer. And I'm going to take you through now the different steps to get through this prac. If you have any problems, as always, just put a comment in the chat box. I'll check it every now and again. Someone says the signal is very bad. I hope it's not on this side. So there's the way that this notebook is set up. I've tried to create different headings so that we can follow along, but also condense some of the code, because you'll see as we start running through it, if you start installing scripts for, packages, for example, and you start loading them, it can create a lot of text that you don't really need to have a look at once it's done. So if you click on the little arrows at each heading, this is the title heading. So it's condensed everything. It says there's 104 cells that are hidden. If I click on that, it opens them. And then I can go down and I can get to my system setup. I click on that, you see 11 are hidden. So if you don't see a section on your screen, just make sure that you have clicked that open or closed, depending on what we're working through. So it should be self-explanatory. This is a work in progress, this script. So if there are any spelling mistakes, I apologize, but I'm going to update it at the end of this lesson, and you'll be able to have a full version. So the first thing we do is under the system setup. There are different ways to do the same thing. It's very similar to R, Python, all of the different coding environments. You can do the similar thing using different approaches. You don't have to link your Google Colab to the drive.
People are saying that their image is not changing in the background. I'm not sure why.
It's not changing. Okay. Let's try this. All right, now?
Yes.
Okay. Oh yeah, sorry. I think I shared my the online version, and then I opened my local version, so it should be okay now. So once again, this is just to show you the drop downs. If you click on that, you see it opens and closes. If you click on the system setup, similarly, and then on the side here, you've got your table of contents. So you can jump from one section to the other quite easily on the side there. If you don't have this table of contents, let's just click on that table of contents button at the top there, and it will open and close it for you. So the first is ecological modeling. That's just an introduction. If you click on the system setup, it closes it. It says there's 11 cells. So when it points down, it means it's open. And as I said, you don't have to go through this step if you don't have any of your own data that you want to test. So today we're going to run through the procedure of taking a CSV file, so a table where you have a site name, a coordinate, and a latitude and a longitude, and a species record. So if you have any of your own data where you've got listed like that, you can mount your Google Drive and you can upload it. You need to do this step before you can bring in any of your own data. But this practical works on data in a different format, so it's not essential. So if you click on this run button here and you get an error, it's fine, you can carry on. In this case, my drive is already mounted, so it doesn't give me any messages. I'm actually going to restart my kernel because I want you to see exactly what you would see on that side. So let me do this. I'm going to restart the session because there are a few pop-ups that happen once you click that, some of these different mounts and authorizations. Okay, so I've restarted my session. That means that I've started from scratch, so I haven't loaded anything. So if I click this, it should theoretically, didn't. Let's try restart it instead. Okay, it says restarting at the top there. So these different sessions are runtime environments. So once you've run something in this kernel, this runtime, then it would have loaded for that session. If you close your Google, your Colab, or you close it and you open it again, you'll have to reload these things because it's essentially resetting it. All right, I'm not going to waste too much time on that. If you click on this, and you've done it for the first time, you should get a window that pops up that asks you to connect your Google Drive or your Google account to this Colab, this Jupyter Notebook. Once you click on the steps through there, it's just going to say connect the drive. It will tell you which is your Google account. You click on the Google account and it will then connect it to the session. Then all the info that's on your drive will then be available in this notebook. The next thing that we have to do is to authenticate and activate your Earth Engine. So this one, I'm hoping it's going to work, but let's try. When you click on this, it should open up a box that allows you to connect to your Earth Engine. Now, importantly, this project name, this is my project name. So you would have your own project name that you need to put in there. So this is the section here where you would need to change it according to your own project name. To get your project name, if you're not sure, you would go into the Google setting. I'm just trying to get that thing for you. Can you still see my screen? It hasn't changed. Maybe we'll do this. Okay, I'm just in Google now. Can you see that? So I'm just going to put in there Google projects. So it comes up with our projects. Oh, that's the open source one. I don't want that. That one. All right. No, I'm on the research. Google. It's the dashboard version, so we can just put in the dashboard. I specifically had it open before I started. Okay, Google Cloud. When you go in here, you will look for projects. Where is that link now? You have the link.
I can check.
Okay, Maarten's going to pop it in the chat for us. Create, there we go. Now I found it, I think. because here is the workspace. We just, I was at it. Okay. Right, so go to create a project. That's it. So I'll just delete this one. All right, so in the chat, did you post it?
Yes.
Oh, okay. So in the chat, you get to this, this screen. Make sure that you've got your correct Google account loaded. So I've got a few different ones. So I'm just going to switch it to my NITheCS one over here. So I've got the correct one. Then on the top here, you'll see a little drop down that lists all of the different projects that you have. If you don't have any projects, you can create a new project by clicking on this this screen. Is everybody seeing my screen? Is it jumping up?
Yes, I think so.
It is?
Let me check. Yes.
It is?
Yeah.
Perfect. All right, so if you haven't got one, create one. I have got one, and you'll see here they've got a name of the different projects, but then on the right-hand side, it's got an ID. And importantly, this is the name that you need to add into your code, not the name of the specific project. So my project ID for the one that I want to connect to in my Google Colab is this one here. So you would copy that and then go back into our notebook and replace that project name there with the correct project name. So it won't be the same as mine, it will be different. Once you've done that, it will open up a pop-up box that says to allow the project to connect, rather the Colab notebook to connect to your Earth Engine project. It will just take you through those few steps to click on the correct Google Drive account and then click allow for the project to connect. If you haven't connected to Earth Engine before, it's going to ask you for an authentication key, but the steps on there should be quite straightforward. It will tell you exactly what to do. It will tell you that you need to copy the key that gets that jumps up on the next page. You copy that key and you paste it into the little window that will pop up on this code that we've got here. And once you've done that once, you won't have to do it again. So the first time you need to just copy that key. Once you've copied it and you've inserted it, you shouldn't have to do it again unless it has done it to me before that I had to do it, but it was after a long time of not accessing my site. But once you've done it now, if you go back and do it, you won't have it again. So now you've got your Earth Engine imported, you want it authenticated, and you initialized it to connect to your project. Now the rest is the same as what we did last week with Maarten. We run through the process of importing our different packages. I've tried to put some text here that I'm not going to go through, but it will hopefully help you when you go through this this code later on your own to see if you can make some sense of what we're actually doing here. Just to give you a very, very basic breakdown, similar to what you would do in R, because I know a lot of you are using R. When you import a package, you'll see the import comes up as a purple color, and these are the packages that we're importing. You can do some shortcuts where instead of doing one at a time, you can list a whole lot like I've done there. You can also rename something so that when you use the commands later on, you don't have to keep typing out geopandas, you just type out GPD. So this import geopandas as means that I'm now replacing that with an alias of GPD. So each time I use it, I don't have to keep typing out that whole name. Similarly, then if you have specific functions that you want to import from different packages, you can set a from this, import that, and rename it. So you're essentially renaming a function in this case. In this case, you're renaming the package. Here, you're renaming the function within that package. So run this, and might get an error. If you do get an error, it's good. I want you to get an error. So if you get an error, I wanted to show you again, I think maybe Maarten touched on this last week, but some packages you have to keep installing in Colab. It's not like R where you would install a package and then when you use your program again, you just have to load the library. In this case, there are some that you need to redo. So remember to click the down arrow. An easy way of doing this is instead of just importing it, you can create a tiny little function here that says, try to import ratio. If you don't find it, then go and install the package. So this command, the exclamation mark pip install, is the same as your install.packages for R, but you need this explanation in the front to be able to install any packages. So you can run it and it will hopefully take you through. I've already installed it, so you wouldn't get it, but you'll get a long list of things that are busy being installed, and you'll see it fills up the page quite quickly, and that's why I put in these little the title pages so that we can shrink it, so it's not going to keep taking up so much space. Here's the other way of doing it. It just went up a bit here. This is all commented out, so it didn't run. Even if you click on it, it wouldn't run. This is another way to do it, but now you'll have to do it each time, whereas the other way, you can first check if it's installed. If it is, load it. If it's not, then install it and then load it. So it's just a different way of doing the same thing and trying to condense your code. All right, so you run all of that. If you do get any errors about a package after you've run this try command, then you can just go back to the top here and take one of these and replace it. So if you know, one of these things didn't import, like GeoPandas, you can just uncomment one of these. So to uncomment, you just press Control and the backslash, right? And then you can just run it and replace that name if it's something else, and that will then install it for you. All right, so we've done all that. Now we're going to have a look at how to access the data. So there's many different ways to access data through GitHub, through your local drive, through GBIF, using the different commands through RGBIF or PyGBIF. I'm going to take you through a few of them, not all of them, but just a quick example. This is data that is sitting on our Mini-school's GitHub site, so it should work for you. I've commented out this option, which is reading data directly from my drive. So if you have data on your drive, you can change this path and change the CSV name to the file that you have on your G drive. So I left it here so that you could do it. This one is using the pandas, so PD. Remember, I shortened it to PD instead of pandas, and it's using the read.cv command, and it's going to read this table from our GitHub site. So when you run that, you're pressing this little play button, you should get a table that looks like this, with the year, month, the quarter degree code, the family. So this is not a file directly from GBIF. This is a file from GitHub that we process from GBIF, and I think it's a version that Maarten ran through last week. I just changed a few things, I think. And then this function here, when the data was imported, it had a field called year month, but I didn't want that as a year month field. I wanted to split it and keep a year and a month. So this little function here just split it into those categories. Is it taking a long time for you, or is it just me? Has everyone loaded that? Does everyone see that year month screen? So once it's loaded, you'll see this. That's how to access any data that you have on GitHub. Then we've got the GBIF data. So this is data directly from GBIF. And there are different ways to access the GBIF data. If you scroll down to the section where it says GBIF API through PyGBIF, you open that up. This is using that occurrence search function that we have in this PyGBIF package. This is what Maarten showed you last week, and I think he showed you an option where you can search for taxon key 212, which are all the birds. It limits it to 100, and it turns it into a data frame for you. So if you do that, you should get a GBIF table that looks like this. So this is the raw GBIF data as it comes out of the API using that function. And you can have a look at the data, or in this case, we're just going to print the first few rows of the heading scientific name, and it will give you the list. And then you can also do some customization. So this one takes a little bit of time to run, 3 minutes to be precise, but I'm going to try and speed up a little bit. So I'm not going to run it, but you guys can run it in your own time. We don't need this to carry on with the tutorial, but it is a very good function for you to use yourselves and to try and customize. So this is a function that takes the base of the API, and I've put in here a number of filters that I use a lot. So the DEF declares a function. This is the name of the function, and then these are the parameters that we need in the function. Here is the annotation for that function so that you can read more about it. And then here is the actual function itself, where it takes the base URL and filters according to these different parameters. So run that. It will run the function, but it won't do anything, because what it's doing now is it's created the function and it's waiting for you to actually apply it. So that's why if you scroll down further, you'll see another drop down that says run the function. So I've kept it specifically separate because I wanted you to be able to have space to work. So here, once you run it, you'll see you can set different criteria here. So you can change it to human observation, set it to the African continent, ZA. So the benefit of using this is that the API or the different packages, they limit your data to 300. So in many cases, you want to have more records than that. So by doing it this way, we can change the maximum amount of records. So I've specifically changed it to 14,000 because I know there are about 13,000 records in this data set, and I filtered out for ducks, geese, and swans. So that taxon key there is for those taxa. You can change this according to anything that you want, and also you can set the start date and the end date to filter out that. Now, I'm not going to run it because I don't want to use up any more time on that. I want to stop this. But essentially, once you've run it, it will take about 3 minutes to run, and you'll get just under 13,000 records for these animals. Don't worry about if it didn't run, because what I've done is you can also use the zip data or rather the zip URL that you get when you create your GBIF query. So this is a function that you can also have a look at in your own time. I've put a lot of annotation there so you can go through it yourselves, but it will take the URL that you got when you filtered data using the GBIF dashboard, and you can load it directly in. So remember, Maarten showed you last week that once you put a request in, you will get a DOI for that data set, and it will be a unique identifier that will lead you to the zip file that's connected to that. So if I run this function, now, once again, nothing's going to happen because I've just set the function up. Now I need to actually apply it. So I put it separately here. We're going to take this URL. So you take it from your zip file on your requested page under your profile, paste it in, and then here's the function that you apply it to. And it's going to take that zip file, unzip it, and put it in a table format like this. And it's going to specify these columns. So that data set that we got here from GBIF, it had all of these extra columns that I don't want. I don't want to have this massive long table. I just want to have specific columns. So I've specified there that when you return this data to me, just return this info here. And that's what I get. I get this this table with year, month, family, species, etc. Now, if I want to have environmental data, so this is now my species data. I still haven't created a cube, but I need to create some environmental data before I actually do any analysis. This is where the Earth Engine comes in. So I've given you some basic information about the Earth Engine here in the script, so you can have a look at that in your own time. First thing we do is set up some parameters. So rather than typing in each time the date range for the different environmental variables that we're going to filter, we can create an object for that. So when you change this object, it changes it for all of the filters that you have applied later on. So it's much easier to do it this way so that you don't have to keep changing multiple sites where you put a number or you put a variable that you want to change. So that's what that's doing. Okay. Then we can start pulling in data. Now, the Earth Engine data set, if I click on that link there, this is an example of the large scale international boundaries, the polygons that have been simplified. But as Maarten showed you last week, if I click on view all data sets, there is a large amount of different data sets that you can choose from here. And when you click on any of these, let's take this for example, it will give you the Earth Engine snippet. So this is the code that you need to be able to read that data in. So in our practical here, we've used this function. So if we click on that data set, it told us which function to use. And it also gives you an example at the bottom here. So you just need to go and cut and paste that code into your script to be able to call that data in. So that's what I've done here. I've called this feature collection. So a feature collection is a collection of points, lines, or polygons. And I've filtered out where the country name is South Africa, Lesotho, and Swaziland. So it's going to give us that whole area. And just to double check that everything worked correctly, I'm printing out how many countries, how many records are in that feature collection once I've processed it. And it should come out with 3. I've also set a geometry here. This is just taking the boundaries of the countries that I've filtered out for, and it's creating a box. So when I want to filter out later, instead of having this intricate boundaries, I can just look at the geometry of the project and filter it out like that. So it will just take much less information to process. And can do the same thing. Here I've got the CHIRPS data set. So this is a really nice data set. It's got the monthly rainfall from 1981 until 2004. It's at a 5-kilometer resolution, which isn't too bad. And once again, this is the snippet. All I have to do is paste it in here. But then what I've also done is I filtered out for the start date and the end date. So I didn't want to have it from 1981. I want to only take it from 2010. So it's not going to give me everything. I've also filtered by the boundaries of the region. So this doesn't really work for this product here because it's not flown in in paths. There aren't specific scenes available. It's one large data set. If you had a MODIS data set here where you've got different MODIS paths and rows, then it would give you just those paths and rows. But I've put it in here just to show you how it works. If I go back to this chirps and I click on bands, you'll see that there are different bands. In this case, there's only one. It's called precipitation. And I've selected just that band when I pulled out this data set. And I've checked to see how many I have, and I should have 936 images. Do the same thing for monthly water. So this is also a really nice data set. Unfortunately, only goes to 2022, but it's from 1984, and it's at a 13-meter resolution that it tells you whether there is water present in a pixel or not. What's important here to note is that it's got what they call a bit mask. In this case, it says that only values that are equal to 2 are actually water. A value that's 1 is not water, and a value that's 0 is no water. So if you want to count the number of times water was present, you can't just sum the values in there, because you're going to be summing 1. You have to actually filter out for the value 2 and then count those value 2s. So that's an important thing to note. And that's what I've done here. So I've taken the image collection, which is the code they told me. I've filtered out the start date and the region, and I've selected water. So I've done all of this in one step. In this step here, I first called the chirps, then I selected the precipitation. You can combine them. So I tried to show you in different ways. Then, if you're used to working in Google Earth Engine, you won't be that familiar with this lambda function. But if you're working in Colab, you have to use this as a client-side operator to be able to run anything. So it's basically running the equation that says equal to 2. That's all I want. I want to have a mask where my water occurrence is only equal to 2. And then I should have 144 images in my list. Now I can plot it by looking at GMAP. So this GMAP library is allowing us to connect through Earth Engine and be able to view all of our results on an interactive map. When you run it, it doesn't do anything, because what it's doing is connecting, it's creating the map environment, but you have to physically call the map environment to be able to see what's going on there. All right, then you can plot the layer. So this function here, map add layer, adds the layer to the map that we have, and it adds controls to it, and you can put a map function, a map there to actually open the map. So putting map here physically opens the map for you to have a look at. Now my script seems to be hanging for some reason. I don't know why. But luckily it still remembers when I did it earlier. So hopefully your guys is working. So you won't have all of this. Perfect. So yeah, sorry about that. Mine seems to have hung, but it should still work. When you run this row here, you won't have all of these ones here. You won't have all of these layers. You'll only have the rainfall one, because that's the only one that we've added, this rain mean. Now, I've also done a whole lot of stuff on the fly. So I've created here a rainfall image collection. So I've got rain and I've got 936 images. But on the fly, what I've done is I've taken that rainfall collection, I've created a mean of that whole collection, and I've clipped it by the region. So now I end up having a thing called monthly mean rainfall. Okay, now I'm going to connect. And I'm going to just restart the session quickly. because it doesn't even let me zoom in and out. Let me quickly try this again. All right, so I'm connecting that quickly. Okay, good. Right. All right, I was hoping I could get away with this slow running, but I can't show you any of the zooming in and out. So I'm just quickly going to run through the essential parts so that I do have that. As I said, you don't have to run all of those. It works fine from this load from URL zip. So this should work now. Yes, okay, good. All right, so that. Okay, good. Now hopefully. Good. Okay, that's what I want. All right, so now it's loaded on. If I click on this little layer function there, it's got my mean monthly rainfall added in. But what's happened is I can't access the drop down here to change the symbology. It's stuck. And that's because I've put my symbology straight into the add layer function. So alternatively, what I can do is down here, I can set my visualization parameters outside of that function. So I can create a visualization parameter for rain, and I can create a visualization parameter for water. All right, once again, it doesn't do anything. And now I can do a similar thing where I sum everything and I clip it, or I do the mean everything and I clip it. But now I just put in my visualization parameters there. So I don't have it embedded into my add layer. And I can run that now. And okay, that's weird. I still have. Okay, there we go. So this thing closed up. So if you have a little, what is this called, spanner toolbar there, and it allows you to click on this layer option, now you'll see that you've got a place where you can turn them on and off. But you can also click on that little wheel and you can change the colors and you can change the range. This is stuff that I've already set. So I set this when I set up the visualization parameters, but you can change it. Now, importantly, you'll see it changes in the map above as well. So once you've created that map, it's going to keep updating. So you don't need to keep calling it because it's going to keep adding to the map, which you don't want to do. Now we want to create, now we've got our environmental data, we have our species data, but we need to make a cube out of that. So if you have a look at that data set again to remind us what it looked like, you've got the year and the month, the family, the species, and the decimal latitude and longitude. But that's not a cube, that's just a table that gives us a list of all of the records. Now, Maarten showed you last week how you can create a quarter-degree square grid, and then you can intersect that with your species to count. I'm going to take a shortcut here where I'm going to keep it as a point, but I'm going to basically round it off to a quarter degree. So the coordinates we have are in degrees already. So if we just create a quarter degree from it, you've got your center point for your quarter degree grid. So that's what this code is doing here. It's rounding it off, and then it's grouping by the year, the species, and the latitude and longitude, and counting the unique occurrences of the species names. And when you do that, here we've got the year, the species, the latitude, the longitude, and the count. So the number of times that that species were seen in this quarter degree grid. because remember the actual coordinates were much finer. So now that we've expanded upwards, we've got 15 of those records, whereas the previous table was just 1. Now to create a cube out of that, we just need to take it and group it by that unique value each year. So if we run it, you should now have a table that's got a unique latitude and longitude, which is the center point of your quarter degree, and then a column for every single year. So each year is the count of the number of species, the unique species that were recorded in that block. So this is essentially your species richness. And it's filled it with a 0 so that if there is an NA where there was nothing, we wanted to say there was nothing, which in this case is 0. And then for us to plot this, we can plot it as it is, but if we want to start putting it on a map, we have to take this table, which is a Panda table now, and we want to convert it into a geo data frame. So we want to be able to plot this on a map. We just take the quarter degree lat long, which are our coordinates, specify them in this function, convert it, and then when you go down here and you can plot it, this whole section here allows us to take that cube and plot it on a map. So if we run that, we might get an error because of the colors, but don't worry about that. It still works, it should still work. All right, now you end up with a map that lists that. It gives you for every year a different color, and then the size of the circle represents how many species were in that area. Now, this is not ideal because if there is a small number of records in 2010 and a larger number in 2022 at the same quarter degree, it's going to be underneath, so you're not going to see it. But I just wanted to show you how you could use this to plot in the normal matplotlib library. We want to use it in Earth Engine instead. But first we want to look at some of the trends. So we can take our species richness and then just count the number of species that we had each year across the whole of South Africa. All right, so that's just counting the number of unique species. And then we can just plot it and have a look at how that has changed over time. So here you've got species richness, and on the bottom here you've got the year, and it's just plotted the number of species over time for the whole of South Africa, because I've ignored the quarter degrees now and just summed it. But importantly, when you're using this data, you need to also consider the popularity of citizen science, and it's skyrocketed. So we would like to know, actually, how does this relate to not just the number of species, but the number of records, essentially the sampling effort. So we can do exactly the same thing, but now instead of counting the unique observations, we can sum, the unique species, we can sum the number of observations instead, and we can plot it on the same graph, but using a different color and a different axis. So you can see on the right-hand side now we've got the total observations, and there is a perfect link with it. So you need to keep that in mind whenever you're looking at some sort of species richness situation. Okay, I've only got 10 minutes left. So I'm going to just quickly show you how we process the environmental cubes, because I think that's important. And in a similar way to what we've done now with the species richness, we just have a look quickly at the number of images we have. So we've got 936 rainfall, we've got 144 water. Now, we don't want it to be every single month or every single day. We want it to be accumulated per year. So we can design a function here that filters out the period we want. We can also convert it into a lower resolution so that it will happen quicker. And if we run that function and then we actually apply it, we should end up with 13 images now because we've condensed it. We're looking at the sum of all the rainfall months. And if we plot that, so as I said, if you don't run this map function, it's going to appear on the top. If I just want to speed things up, so I'm going to uncomment that so that my map appears at the bottom here and I don't have to keep scrolling upwards. Here's my map. And now I've got monthly mean rainfall. So this is the long-term monthly mean of rainfall. Can do the same thing with water, but when we look at water, it's very tricky to look at any relationship between an actual water source versus the distance from water. So your observation has to be physically standing in the water for it to have any relationship with that water. And if you're using a 1/4 degree square, as you can imagine, that's not going to give you a very accurate account. So what we can do there is we can instead calculate the distance to water. So there are two functions here that I've put. The one is to first count the number of times water was present in a month. If you run that, and if you run that, you don't actually need to run it there, and then using that function embedded in another, we can calculate the distance to water per year. So we run that function and apply it down here. And you see I've embedded in here the visualization. So as I said to you before, there's different ways to do the same thing. If I just put my visualization parameters straight in the add layer function, I've now got 12. Now I've added the layer, but I didn't call the map argument. So that means I must go up here to where I called it last, and there I now have my total water occurrence. And you can see it is now the distance. I zoom in and out. It is no longer just a point of water, it is the distance gradient from water. So now that is an ideal environmental variable for me to use to see if it's affected ducks and geese, rather than making sure the duck is actually sitting in the water during the record. So once you have all of this, the next step is to actually run the analysis. And this step gave me a lot of problems just before I started the session. So I cheated a little bit and I just created a data frame for you here. Since we're running out of time, I'm not going to go through this, but rather say to you that by the end of the week, if you go back to the link that we've provided, this section here will be updated to read it directly from all of the other layers that we've produced at the top here. Because at the moment, it's taking a subset and it's just plotting the relationship, which is not ideal. But I think it's enough to show you at this stage just how to get those data cubes for the species, to calculate species richness into a data cube format, how to get these environmental variables and create your own data cubes using image collections. And then the last step is to look at that relationship. So I'm going to annotate this part of the script for you and make sure that it runs with the data that's at the top there. But I think I'll stop there so that we have a few minutes for questions. And then we can catch up again with this next week. And also, if you keep an eye on the links, they will stay the same. So you can just keep looking on that for an update.
Yeah, thank you very much, Sandra. It was a really an enjoyable lecture. Thank you very much. I learned a lot of things. I never used Google Cloud before. Thank you. That was very nice. I'm sure we have lots of questions. But I think Maarten is taking very good care of it. Yeah. please don't be shy. If you want to ask a question in person, I just raise your virtual hand and I can give you the right to ask the person the question directly. I think everybody's too shy. Yeah. And the talk was too good. Yeah.
So I realize we always seem to be rushing, but there's so much cool stuff that one can do. So at the end of this series, we've actually got a little form that we'd like you to fill out to give us some advice on what you'd like to see next. So it might be a good idea if we went through the basics of Earth Engine, for example. So do you have that down before we jump into everything?
Excellent. And Sandra, if you want, if you give us the questions in advance, we can organize it as a poll within Zoom.
Ah, perfect. I've already got the questions. I'll send that to you. Thank you.
Perfect. Yeah, and so that or we do a Google form, but probably it's easier if it is within Zoom. So who is there can just click,
Perfect.
And then it's
that
done.
Would be ideal.
Yeah. Excellent. Yeah.
So yeah, in the meantime, everyone online, start thinking about what you would like to see, so that we can make sure we give you what you want next time. And if you have any questions, put up your hand or in the chat. But if you're too shy, or for whatever reason, you're welcome to email myself or Maarten, and we can try and help you that way. Keep an eye on the script, as I said, because we will update it to run through the whole process. But everything else should work. Hopefully everything worked. We didn't give any serious errors on my side or on the chat, so hopefully it was good.
Nobody complains, but I'm sure it was all right. Excellent. Then thank you very much, Sandra and Maarten. I'm looking forward to next week, to the next mini school next year. Yeah. Excellent. Thank you. If as soon as you send us the slides, we will make a plan to upload them on the website so people can browse through the slides as well at their pleasure. Yeah. Excellent.
Perfect.
Thank you very much. I just see the question. How long will the node be available? I guess forever.
Forever, yeah. Until NITheCS deletes my account. So it shouldn't be.
That will never happen. We will write them in stone. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Then there's your answer.
Excellent. No, thank you very much. Thank you, Sandra. Thank you, Maarten. See you again next week, and hopefully soon in Stellenbosch as well. Yeah. Will you be in Stellenbosch before the end of the year?
I'm in Stellenbosch actually at the moment.
Stellenbosch. Okay.
Outside.
Okay. Excellent. Then we should meet for a coffee one of these days. Yeah.
Definitely.
No, definitely. Let's do that. Yeah. Thank you.
Do that. Sure.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
Thanks, everyone, and thanks for coming. See you next week.
Bye.
Bye, everyone. Bye-bye.